need strategies to open up exclusive, expensive, predominantly white, usually suburban communities to diverse residents, to those people who are non-white who want to live in those communities. We don't want to limit choices or options for anyone. And those communities, have a history of being very exclusionary. They're not all white for no reason. They were created that way and intentionally kept that way. And so there's a lot of things we can do to change how those communities look to ensure that they are desegregated as well. We call these mobility strategies. So some of these include changing zoning. This is a big issue today in the housing crisis that the country is in. One of the reasons we are in a housing affordability crisis is because our country hasn't built enough housing to keep up with demand over the last several decades. One of the reasons why we haven't done that is because of exclusionary zoning. Communities that zone themselves to only allow one house per lot anywhere in their community. Now, most of the residentially zoned land in this country is zoned to allow only one home per lot. It's called single-family only zoning. It ensures that the homes in that community will remain expensive and unaffordable to anyone but those who have intergenerational wealth and who were allowed into home ownership when it was affordable. Now, those homes remain expensive because those communities can't build more homes as demand rises. So as demand rises, the prices just go up. So we need to reform zoning around the country to address the affordable housing crisis we're in, but we also need to reform zoning to desegregate those all-white communities because little known history of zoning is that single-family only zoning was born out of racialized zoning. It used to be that cities zoned their neighborhoods by race, saying this is a zone for only whites, this is a zone for African Americans. That was found to be unconstitutional. So in its place, cities zoned those white areas for single-family only use, and that ensured that they stayed all white. So again, once we understand this history and how it came to be, we can see that challenging these laws that we still operate under is an important first step towards challenging the segregation of our communities. So another important mobility strategy has to do with Section 8 housing choice vouchers. Now, I'm sure we've all heard of the program or familiar with it. It's the largest federal rental subsidy in the country for lower income tenants, helps them afford rental units. All around the country, there's 2 million recipients of Section 8. They're disproportionately African American families. And the idea when Section 8 was created was to allow lower income families the opportunity, if they wanted, to leave high poverty areas to move to higher opportunity areas. Areas with access to well-resourced public schools, open space, clean air, well-resourced libraries, access to jobs and transportation. Because the Section 8 voucher benefit is mobile. It's not tied to a building or to a unit in a public housing building or development. You can use it to rent anywhere in the private market. So the intention was that it would allow lower income tenants to leave high poverty areas if they wanted. Is it working that way? No. Only 5% of Section 8 families can use their voucher to rent in high opportunity communities. And white Section 8 recipients are more likely to be able to use their voucher to rent in these high opportunity communities than African American Section 8 tenants. Now, one reason for this is discrimination, not surprisingly, but racial discrimination in housing is illegal, but discrimination against people who use Section 8 to pay their rent is actually legal in the federal government's eyes. It's sort of incomprehensible to think that the federal government created a benefit and then allows landlords to discriminate against people who use that benefit. That's how it is. So it's legal on the federal level, but many states and localities have outlawed this kind of discrimination. So there's about 20 states and 100 cities and counties that have adopted what are called source of income discrimination ordinances. And these say that it's illegal to discriminate against tenants who use, just because they use Section 8 to pay their rent. So based on the source of their income, you can't deny a tenant access to a unit if they're otherwise qualified. So if we live in an area that doesn't have a source of income discrimination ordinance, that's an important first step to advocate adopting one so that Section 8 tenants don't face discrimination. And then we all know that adopting an anti-discrimination ordinance is not the end of the story. Once it's on the books, we then have to make sure that it's enforced. That includes educating landlords that they can't discriminate against Section 8 tenants, educating Section 8 voucher holders to know when they're being discriminated against and what to do about it, and then also monitoring and enforcing when that discrimination occurs. Now, the only real way to know when that discrimination is occurring is through what's called paired testing. And this is when usually a fair housing center or civil rights organization runs paired testing programs. They send volunteers, or sometimes they pay them, to pose as tenants. And if it's for an apartment, usually they're calling and they say, I'm looking for, I'm interested in this unit you have for rent. Some say that they use Section 8, and some say they don't. Some are African American, some are white, and you can see how they're treated. And if the ones who say they don't use Section 8 are shown the unit or offered the unit, and the ones who say they do are not, then that's the only true way we can see where this discrimination is happening. Those paired testing programs, they exist all over the country. They are limited by resources and volunteers to be those testers. So this is another way we can be involved, by volunteering with a paired testing program to help find where this discrimination is occurring so it can be prosecuted. Another issue with the Section 8 voucher program is how it's designed. So the way the Section 8 program works is when you receive a Section 8 benefit, you pay 30% of your monthly income, no matter what it is, towards your rent, and then the Section 8 voucher pays the rest of the rent up to a maximum amount. It makes some sense, but the maximum amount, how that is set, makes a big difference in how well this program can be used. So the maximum voucher amount is usually set taking a metropolitan area, which is a large area, full range of rents, the lowest to the highest, and taking the middle rent, and 10% below that middle rent is the maximum amount a voucher will pay. So by definition, over 60% of the rents in the entire metropolitan area are too expensive for voucher holders. They can't afford it. So it's not surprising that they can't use these vouchers to rent in those higher opportunity areas, which are usually higher cost areas. This is all a product of the design of the program. Well, the program has evolved some since it started. There was a lawsuit here in Dallas that changed how that maximum amount is set so that now it's in some places based on a smaller area of rents, so a zip code or a group of zip codes, and the median rent in that smaller area is the maximum rent the voucher will pay in that small area. So it pays more in high-cost areas and less in lower-cost areas, which makes some sense. Starting next year, 65 metropolitan areas around the country will be required to use this rent payment standard. It's called the Small Area Fair Market Rent Standard. So if we live in one of those 65 areas, we got to make sure that those public housing authorities are implementing this new rent payment standard effectively and faithfully. And if we don't, public housing authorities outside of these 65 metro areas can also adopt voluntarily a small area rent standard. So that's another thing we can advocate for in our own communities that goes a long way towards increasing opportunity for Section 8 voucher holders.